excited to have you guys here joining us. We just thought it'd be fun to hang out for an hour, paint, answer some questions for you if you've got questions, and then we'll just take it from there. So if you've got a question, do me a favor, go ahead. I'm not going to be able to look at the comments as we're painting because it's just too far away for me. So go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, and then mute yourself again. And that way I'll be able to come up, or Pat will be able to come up on the screen so you guys can see us painting and responding. So let's go ahead and do that. Sound good?
Yeah, because I'm far away from it too, unless I were to put it on my computer, which is not a good angle.
Yeah, no.
Can I?
We're good. I'm going to get up here and I'm going to start. Move my chair out of the way.
So
I see.
Hi, Deidre.
What size do you have there?
I did the 24 by 18.
Okay, me too.
All right.
Yep.
Great.
I like you got yours all taped up. I just taped mine across the top because I'm using watercolor paper that comes on the spiral. This is what I'm using.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, and so it comes, I just pull it off of here, and then I just tape along that edge up there. I just leave that on, and then I put some tape in the back here so that it doesn't fly up and off too much. And then I put down a layer of gesso already. I did that about 10 minutes ago so that it would start drying. So watercolor. My paper. Yeah. My
paper's naked.
Oh, well, time to gesso. I'm going to get started. So
yeah, I'm going to get started. I don't usually gesso, and I will explain a little bit about what I rigged up here. Is Betty has a painting wall. I have a really big painting wall, but the light in this room is better. So what I did is I taped up some plastic, and the plastic, bows a little bit, and that's why I taped around all the edges. Usually I'm using the mixed media version of that Strathmore paper. Yeah. And it doesn't buckle. It performs really, really well. And it doesn't really need to be taped down. I just did that so that when you view it, you'll be able to see it. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. But that's a quick and dirty way to do it. Frog tape, plastic on your wall, especially with paper. Otherwise, you can put a couple nails in your wall and you're good to go.
Yep. What I like to do for hanging my canvas is I like to, I don't know if you guys could see this on the screen, but right here I have a screw that's sticking out about a ½ inch, maybe a little more than a ½ inch. So I just end up hanging, and I put the screws in the studs so that it's very secure. If you just put in this sheetrock, it's going to loosen up.
Exactly.
And I've got them just going all the way across here so that I can just hang my canvas right up on it. So very convenient. All right, so I've started with my mark making, which I love to do. And then I like to switch to my black, or I like to start with my black. Let's see. A lot of my brushes are in my downtown studio. I've got a few here. So we'll just go with what I've got here. So remember, if you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself. You can ask the question and then mute yourself again.
What I do is whatever works. Since time is a constraint, I just dove in with the color. Now I may end up with my pencil dragging through the color at this point. It does, but I get my marks kind of backwards, and that works too.
Yeah, I think we have a question.
Because most of them will be covered up, just like, okay. What's the question? I don't see it.
Know what you used for marking the pencils? China marker or China pencils, or what did you use for marking?
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Christine. All right, so I used a variety of different things. I used my Stabilo pencils, which are these woodies, fat woodies. I used, I think I used these Derwent, they're watercolor pencils. I just put about anything on my first layer. I used a regular #2 pencil. I always start with a regular #2. And then I think I probably use my Prismacolor, one of my Prismacolor pencils in there too. So those are a variety of different ones that I use, but I've got even more in here, like charcoal that I didn't, or graphite that I didn't take out. Pat, you want to?
Exactly. Exactly. I started out with graphite to drag it through, because I can drag graphite, a regular #2 pencil, through wet paint and it doesn't hurt it. You know, I can just wipe it off, or I can sharpen that pencil and it doesn't hurt it. So I use my pencils to mark a lot, whereas sometimes Betty uses her toothpicks.
Yeah,
I use my pencils like that. Yeah, I do the same thing, but it gets the same results. It's just different. And, you know, I just grab anything. This is a graphite stick, and it is water soluble also. And it's from Caran d'Arche, and it's just called Graph Cube. And I haven't used it yet because since it is water soluble, I don't know how much gray I want to mix with my paint at this point. So that will gray it down and it might muddy it. Later, I might decide to use this as my gray. So it's just like Betty. It's just like we're just diving in and we're just putting paint on the paper, and, you know, go ahead and, you know, dive in the way that feels comfortable to you. I like to start sometimes just with a color and then respond to the color.
Yep.
And then I'll start to put my black in sometimes first, but sometimes I'll respond to this so that I have a value scale to work between. So since this is kind of a warm blue, it would be a medium value if you look at it in gray. And then I might put black on here so that I have something that'll give me a gauge of what I'm going to work between and respond to between.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
I think so. I think we got another question coming in.
I have a question for Pat.
Yes.
What is that color that you're using? And it looks kind of transparent, that turquoise color.
Oh, it's actually not transparent. I use all kinds, and this is just an aqua green Artist Loft, and it is an opaque color.
Okay. Thank
Now,
you.
if you add water, a little bit of water to it, then you will always get that transparency. If you use a teal, some of the teals, and you can read it on the tube, will be translucent, maybe transparent. But this is not a transparent paint. And the black that I put on here is not a transparent black, but I have a lot of water because I'm using a really fat hog's hair brush that holds a lot of water. Okay?
I have a quick question. I don't see Pat. Am I not doing something?
Okay, so yeah, if
correctly?
you're having a hard time at the top of your screen, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but at the top, there should be something that says speaker's view. If you click on that, you should be able to then see the speaker.
Okay.
And it depends on,
There we go.
yay. And then
Maybe.
go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have a quick question too.
Oh,
Is there any rhyme or reason to your markings?
is there a rhyme or reason to my markings? Yes, so go ahead and unmute yourselves, folks, because we've got background noise of kids talking.
I think you mean mute yourself, Betty.
Yes, I mean mute. Please mute yourself.
I'm on. Hi, Betty. It's Lori. Hey, Pat.
Lori. Okay, so to answer that question, yes, there's a rhyme and reason to my mark making. I'm inspired by fields of flowers. So, and not just fields of flowers, but also nature and the lines in nature. So I'm always looking, you know, whether I'm out on a hike or I'm driving in the car and I'm looking at the hillside, I'm always looking at lines. So it could be a line of trees. It could be a fence line. I love fences, especially the ones that are falling down. So you'll find that sometimes I'll make marks that are falling down like that. Stems, trees, branches, but I tend to do everything a lot more vertical or horizontal. I don't do a whole lot that comes in at an angle like this. And if I do, it's very subtle. So I don't do a whole lot of diagonals. I tend to do a lot more horizontal and vertical. So inspired by fields of flowers and the marks that I see in nature. Thank you for the question. Pat, are you still there?
I have a question. This is Karen.
Hi, Karen.
So the gesso, I'm a very new painter, but what does the gesso do for your paper or your canvas?
Yeah, so the gesso is really important because what it does, it's kind of like when you have brand new walls in a house and you've got the sheetrock up, you want to put primer on it. You're doing the same thing with paper. You're putting primer on the paper so that when you start putting paint on there or anything containing water, it doesn't absorb into the paper and it kind of floats on top. So you're going to end up using a lot less paint when you're creating, and also it's going to prevent your paper, or I shouldn't say prevent, it'll minimize the warping on your paper. So, like here, I can see mine is starting to warp a little bit, but that's okay. It's going to end up flattening out, and I'm going to show you over here. So this is one that I did, and as you can see, it's hardly warped at all. It's got a slight curve to it here, but it's got a layer of gesso on it, and then it's got all the paint on it. So if I ever get to the point where it buckles a little bit, I just flatten it out, put some flat sheets of paper over it, and then put heavy books on it overnight, or sometimes my laptop will go on it overnight to flatten it out. So, but I think it depends on where you're located, because sometimes humidity is going to play a big role in it. So if you're in an area where there's a lot of humidity, I think you're going to find your paper curling a lot more. I just curl it back the other way like this, and sometimes I'll even roll it that way so that I can undo that. But if you're in an area with a lot of humidity, you may want to consider also putting gesso on the back side. That might help seal it a little bit more so that your paper stays a lot flatter.
Thanks, Betty.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it does. I'm in San Diego, no humidity, but yeah, my paper has done exactly that. So thanks.
Oh, what kind of paper are you using, Karen?
Well, I was using like 136 pound, acrylic and watercolor paper.
Okay.
And then I also have these watercolor boards.
Okay.
But I don't use any gesso. So,
okay.
And I've noticed, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Try the gesso. I think it's going to solve that problem for you.
Thank you.
Can I jump in?
You're welcome.
I just wanted to jump in and say that Pat's mic is muted.
Yeah. Oh, did I accidentally mute her?
Yes, hers is muted.
That may have been me. Hang on. Oh, now I got to find Pat. Let's see. Pat, if you can hear me, can you go to the lower part of your screen? There should be a mic there. And can you turn yours back on? I may have accidentally muted you.
You muted me. I got it.
Sorry.
I was trying to answer, but then when I thought they couldn't hear me, I thought maybe they could only hear one at a time. So I let you, explain it.
Go, Pat, go. I apologize for that. I should have put my glasses on, see?
That's okay. The thing about our glasses is, I only need my glasses for certain distance, other distance I don't. So it's like they're up and down and all around.
I get that.
So if there's any questions other than what Betty said, in terms of rhyme or reason for mark making, with me, I think I came kind of organically out of what you would call gestural abstraction. So I make marks because it gives me something to respond to. So every time I make a mark, it's like I'm having a conversation on the page. I can follow the mark. Sometimes the mark can inform my shapes. Sometimes it can inform my decisions, but I'm not bound by them, especially in the early stages. But I'll keep putting them in and seeing if there's something about that mark that adds or takes away from the visual composition of the piece. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
I have another.
Okay.
Are y'all using different brushes for each color, or are you rinsing the brush between colors? How are you doing that?
Pat, you want to go first?
Well, you know, I don't change my brushes a whole lot. I might wipe them off or I might wet them, but what I'm doing is I'm pretty much mixing on the page as I go. So I only wash them if they get really, really gunked up, and say I have a lot of black on a brush, then I'll either change my brush, or if I want a different mark, like a small one, you know, I can start to do marks like this. If I want something that's going to give me like a really big flat mark in a particular color, then I'm going to change to this brush. Now it's kind of black on there now. So it just depends on the kind of mark that I want. And yes, if it's extremely dirty and they don't work together at all, I will use a different brush. If I want to put details in, like Betty, I will use my rigger or a smaller brush. It's just like changing pencil points. That's the thing. If you're a watercolorist and you're coming out of watercolor, then yeah, you want to keep your brushes really, really clean. But acrylics are very forgiving. So who am I seeing?
All right. So for me, I do not clean my brushes, because what I'm doing, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm going to point down real quick. Hang on. All right. So here's my palette, and you can see I've got all my warm colors right now. So I've got my oranges and reds and quinacridone red and magenta. I've got a fluorescent pink, Indian yellow, and medium cadmium yellow. So I'm working with all warm colors. So when I work with warm colors, I blend these as I go. So I'm mixing as I go and putting them up on my palette. Let's see if you guys can see me again over here. Okay, so I do not clean out my brush because I'm just using warm colors, and they're not going to make mud. They're going to work together nicely. I did bring in my rigger. So this is my rigger. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's got long bristles on it compared to this other one. Let me line those up. So this is giving me finer lines, and it just allows me to make, you know, finer marks. And then I'll probably switch out one more time, maybe to like this. Lately this one's been a favorite when I'm working small. So just trying to get a variety of different marks on there by switching out my brushes, but I'm not washing them out. And kind of like what Pat said, you know, if I get some black on it, because in some places I don't think my black is, like right here, it's not dry, but I will grab some yellow and pick up that black and make green. That's a really dark green.
But you think about deliberately mixing your colors as though you were on a palette.
Right,
and if you're, you know, Betty is an experienced painter. And so what she's saying is just what I was saying, that we're mixing mostly on the paper or on the canvas. But we know from mixing a lot off of there what's going to happen.
Yeah, we know what to expect.
Yes, and if you don't, then go ahead and mix on a palette or on a big board, or, you know, a table like Betty does. You know, I have a little thing here. I haven't really mixed anything yet, okay? But I'm going to start mixing all these colors together.
What is that you're using?
Well, this that I'm using, and I'm just going to blot it off because I have to hold it up. This is actually a piece of foam core.
Ah, okay.
All right, just a piece of foam core. And what I did was I put on it that press and seal. It's fantastic. I'm using it for everything.
Yeah.
I almost did my wall in it. My husband said, well, why don't you just put a real piece of plastic up? But it was sticking to my wall.
Yeah.
So this is the Glad press and seal. And I just change it out after it gets really, really dirty.
Okay.
And I can just take it off, but it doesn't require any tape or anything like that. And it essentially does what Betty's table does. And it lets me mix on a flat surface, and I can make this bigger or small as I need. And it's very easy and forgiving to change, and it weighs nothing.
Yeah, that's great. Very convenient.
So.
Do either of you let your paintings dry in between layers?
Yeah, so mine is already, I'm not picking up that much paint. So I tend to paint more of a dry brush technique, so, which just means I don't put a whole lot of paint on my brush. I've got a fan blowing right now down below because it's going to be 90 degrees here in California. But so it's kind of drying as I go. Sometimes if I can see it, I just avoid those wet areas, like where I just put that down. And sometimes when I put down my black, I try to avoid those areas. But I also have, and I was going to do this, is I've got my handy dandy heating tool. You can see it's been used for quite a bit. And I'll just come in and hit it with the heating tool so that I can really dry some of those areas. And then I'm going to switch to my cool colors. So kind of letting this dry. I'm going to move my fan a little bit closer and let it do its magic as I drop my lighting in the back over there.
So Betty,
okay. It's still lit up.
Betty,
yes.
A question. So you're putting very thin layers of paint on when you're painting, because I guess that's what my problem is. I'm putting down too much paint. It's taking it forever to dry, and it's all mixing together.
Yeah. So try putting a lot less paint on your brush, Claire, and just when you're doing your strokes, keep going until you run out of paint.
Okay.
So like on this first layer for me, it goes really fast because all I'm doing is I'm putting down a whole bunch of marks so that later I can decide which marks I want to show on that final layer and which ones I want to cover up. So I find that the more marks I put down, the more decisions I can make later.
Okay, and another question.
Yes.
I guess the quality of paint kind of matters, because it seems like this paint I'm using is pretty transparent.
What are you using?
I'm just using Basics by Liquid Touch.
Yes. Okay. So yeah,
student grade.
Student grade. Yeah. So what you'll find with student grade is it doesn't have as much pigment in it, so that you're not getting that really vibrancy of color that you're probably looking for. It tends to be looking more transparent probably. If you can, I personally love Nova color paints. They're the ones that I use 99% of the time. I've got some golden and some Liquitex that I'm trying to use up. But these are not that expensive. A small one like this, of course, it depends on the color, but a small one like this is anywhere from $5 to $8, somewhere in that range, maybe 10 if it's one of the, I think the cadmiums are a bit more pricey. But if you can, give those a try. And these are the 4-ounce jars. These are great for trying out the paints. I've got them all here because in this studio here at home, I like to work on paper. My studio in downtown, I use the larger jars like this. And even larger than this, I've got the quart size too. So give that a try. And I think you just might find that you're going to like them so much more because the pigmentation is there.
What was the brand, Betty?
It's called Nova, N-O-V-A, Nova Color Paint. And they are a Southern California company. They you can only buy direct from them. So go to their website, novacolorpaint.com or novacolorpaints.com with an S at the end. They've got both those website names. And if you order, tell them I sent you in the comment section. They ship throughout the US and they'll ship to Canada, but just know that you're going to pay the price for shipping it. So, you know, when you're ordering these really large ones, that's going to get pretty heavy because they're in California. If you're shipping all the way out to the East Coast, that's going to get pricey. I'm lucky because I'm here in California. I'm just up the coast from them in a sense. And it's reasonable. You know, when I do a big order, my shipping tends to be around $20 to $25. That's for the larger ones.
Betty, I think they could do free shipping if you buy like more than $50 or something. I ordered some and I don't think I had to pay shipping.
I've
Actually,
never heard that.
They would have charged you shipping separately. They kind of have an older system, so when you place your order, you don't see the shipping charges. That happens afterwards.
I just ordered from Nova, and I live in California also, and they do charge for shipping. I ordered over.
They do,
and they do charge for shipping. You don't see it on your, like you said, Betty. You don't see it when you're putting in your order, but you can call them and they will tell you how much the shipping is. But I must say, even with the shipping, I compared what I would have paid for Golden versus Nova, and I was astounded by how much money I saved. So this last time I ordered the larger jars.
Oh, good.
I do like their product. It's a little bit thinner than the Golden, but to me, sometimes the Golden paints are too thick and they're kind of hard to move around.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Some people like the thicker paints, and you can actually get an additive, and I forget what it's called, but you can thicken it up if you really need that. Right. I love the consistency of it. It's not too thick, it's not too heavy, and it's not too thin either. So I love it.
It's just a nice, and I found, yes, I like it too. And I like to know what kind of paint Pat uses.
I also like the Nova. I use Liquitex, I use Golden. I use a variety of paints, and it really depends on, sometimes what it comes down to is the pigment. You know, I'm real sensitive to pigment. And so if a certain brand has, like I was saying once before, like I love Nova's Payne's Gray. Other Payne's Grays are more blue or more black, but Nova has a gorgeous Payne's Gray. What I can say is that for years from New Jersey, I've been ordering from Nova. The value is tremendous. You can just scratch the shipping because it's still worth it. And if you do the math and you order a nice order, it's going to be heavy. However, it lasts for a long, long time. So my feeling is, you know, get the bigger jars, bite the bullet, but you won't have to run out constantly replacing your paint because of the viscosity of it, just like Betty said, that it's somewhere between heavy body and fluid, that it goes a long way. Pigment is really good and you won't be disappointed. Whereas with the Liquitex Basics, the pigment, to binder is much different. So they are going to come out very transparent. And I used to tell my watercolor students this too. You can go get Grumbacher student grade, but you're going to paint and paint and paint and try to get that pigment up. And you're going to use the whole tube, and you're never going to get the pigment that someone using a higher ratio of pigment, which is more expensive, that's what you're paying for, gets to go a long way. So it's really important to get the best paint you can afford.
Right. Well, Nova is certainly worth much more than the Basics, and it doesn't cost that much more than the Basics. So if you're using Basics and you want to spend a little bit more money, you're much better off going with Nova. And then I'd like to ask Pat, I know that Betty, her paintings are informed by fields of flowers. What is informing your painting?
You know, I consider my painting very pedestrian. You know, everything informs my painting. The better question for me, and that's a good question, is what doesn't? And so I have to try to filter things out because I see certain things and I might have an emotional response to them. So if I have a really strong, can you hear me? Or I hear someone else talking. Okay, so say, you know, I have an emotional response to walking on the beach. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to start going for the neutral colors. I'm going to go for the sand tones. I might put some pops of blue in there. But the following week, it could be the flowers out front. So it's very much, you know, what's happening in my world. And sometimes it's also emotional. And so it's not a really simple question because Betty has really locked in to a genre that she loves. And so she knows what it's about all the time. I am always an emotional painter. So what I'm doing is I'm a perceptive painter. So I'm perceiving something and then I'm responding to it in paint. And so it could just be that I want to do a bunch of paintings in a particular palette because I'm exploring the palette. Or my painting could just be about color. Or it could just be about texture. And how will I respond to that? If I'm going to paint texture, I'm going to bring my color down and I'm going to do earthier colors so that the texture can do the talking. If it's going to be about color, I'm going to bring down the texture and I'm going to bump up the color so that they don't conflict with each other, and I'm going to let color do the talking. So I don't know if that helps you, but it's very much based when I get to the page on the elements of design and what one, like making words, okay? Love, you know, I need an L, I need an O, I need a V, I need an E. Okay, so if I just want to do happy, then that becomes my vocabulary to choose my elements of design. So direction will be affected by that. Color choices will be affected by that.
And can you mute yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bless you. I'm muting a bunch of folks just so we don't have that background noise.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
You muted Pat again, Betty.
Oh.
I'm trying to ask a question and I'm not sure how to go about it.
Oh, Pat, you're going to have to, I can't find you in my list now. Oh, wait a minute. It's alphabetical.
I'm unmuted.
Thank you.
Got it.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Kind of speaking to what you were just talking about, this is my first time painting in this manner. I'm usually more representational. I can see you having lots of experience. You have a certain approach. For someone new like me, would you suggest just like turning off my brain completely? I'm putting paint on my surface and I'm really just not even thinking or really looking. And I've given myself permission to do an ugly painting today, but any suggestions about beginner's approach?
Yes, I do. For some reason, you're wanting now to paint more about how you feel about what you see, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so there, you know, a really good way to do that is to, if you're painting a large piece, I would say paint on paper, split it in fours. If you understand a certain subject and that's the way you paint, then by all means, do that first. Then jump to your next square, okay, and distort it a little bit. Then go to your next one and distort that a little bit because you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose. So now you're learning how to become more expressive. So I wouldn't say jump right from a subject to non-representational. You see, representational, expressive painting, abstract expressionism can be subjective. So if that's where you're at, then by all means, push that until you start to make a departure, if you ever do.
Okay.
You just might want to take your subjects and start to invent with color. So say you use inventive color, well then you're probably not going to want to model your flowers. If it's flowers, you know what I mean? You're probably going to want to paint flatter. You know what I mean? Put warm colors behind, cool colors in front, all of that. But give yourself 4 opportunities and take it to the limit.
I like that.
And just work like that for a while.
So question for Betty, are you working all over the canvas at once? It looks that way. And is there a rhyme or reason to the way you're approaching?
Yes, so I am working the entire canvas or paper today. And my rhyme and reason is not a lot of rhyme and reason yet. What I'm doing is I'm thinking about a few things. I'm thinking about my marks. I'm thinking about making large marks, small marks, warm colors, cool colors. I'm starting to fill in now. So I'm starting to decide what do I want to keep? What do I want to remove? This layer here will probably get covered 2 to 3 more times until I decide which color I really want there. But I'm just getting started. So the way I work is very, I want to say intuitively, but it's a practiced intuitive where I've done it so many times that I know without even thinking too much, I know where I'm going. But yet at the same time, I have no clue where I'm going or how this is going to look. And one of the things that I have found, and this might answer, and I'm sorry, I forget who was on that just asked the last question. In addition to what Pat said, another thing that I find very helpful, and like she said, working on paper, because I love paper because I can be so loose and free because it's just a piece of paper. Hand me a canvas and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's precious. I've got to be careful. It's that whole mentality thing. One thing that I have found that, hey, Pat, that's looking really cool.
Thank you.
I was
Thank
just
you.
peeking over. So one
Can you see it? Because I just see myself little on there, so I can't really see what you see.
What you can do, there's a way to undo that, but
that's all right. Answer your question. Okay. It's more important.
So one thing that I have found is that I listen to podcasts when I'm creating, or I talk with other people. I've been doing, since we've gone into quarantine, I do once a week. Lori's on here, but my friend Rena, Lori, and Marcella up in Canada, we like to get together and we just talk and create. So that's another way. And when you're doing that, your right brain is allowed to just the freedom of creating. So that's our creative side.
Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Exactly what we're doing now. So the left brain is more.
We can't think.
Yeah, the left brain is more judging. So when you are listening to somebody or having a conversation, you're engaging your left brain so that your right brain can be free to create. And I have found this to be so important in my art practice. I know pieces that I've worked on where if I just listen to music, it's just not the same as if I listen to a podcast. And it could be a podcast on, huge topics that are, like Black Lives Matters movement. I'll listen to podcasts about that, but I'm still creating, bright, beautiful artwork, no matter what the topic is. So again, that's just my brain engaged in the conversation that I'm hearing or the conversation I'm having, and it's allowing me to not judge what I'm doing, and it's just allowing me to do and to just keep moving. So I hope that.
I think
quick question.
Really, go ahead.
I just wondered if there was a limit to how many colors you feel like you can use on one piece of paper.
That's a great question.
I'll answer that, Betty. You answer it after. There is no limit. I mean, we make our own limitations. However, if you're struggling with color, okay, then yes, limit your palette, because there's so many things you have to consider as an abstract painter if you're not painting a subject. Because if you're not painting a subject, you have no place to get your next, move from. You have no information. So you've got to navigate composition, you've got to navigate size and shape and all these things, and you're just getting to learn it. So yeah, if you're struggling with color, limit your palette. And then, if you love a lot of color, go back in once you have a really good base and pop some other colors in, either with marks or with a complementary color or a bang. You know what I mean? That will help you. And then when you get to the point that you can navigate a lot of colors, and honestly, I'm a colorist, but if I get too many colors going on, I make a hot mess. And then, it's like Betty said, because you've been doing it so much, I know how to pull out of a nosedive. But if you're not there, you're going to get frustrated. And if you do go there, one thing that you can always do, and I will do this a little bit with this, is just get some gesso and get rid of some of it and then respond to that. So I don't know if that helps you, but I really believe in limiting your palette until you're really comfortable with your medium. If it's a new medium, give yourself some grace. Why try to do everything at once? It's going to be really hard and you're going to be frustrated and you might abandon it. So limit and simplify whatever you can simplify. If you're really into, you really love collage, all right, then you probably don't need to use, you can, it's not a rule, a million colors, but you can kind of lay a really good foundation and then let your collage pieces do the talking in that case. Because see, there's always conversations going on the page. And if there's too many things happening at once, it's chaotic. It's all right to choose to be chaotic, but the eye needs places to rest. The eye needs to be able to move around. That's why Betty will say, I'm getting larger shapes over here, or I'm smoothing out areas over here. Because if she lets all the marks show everywhere, then nothing's important. So again, if you're struggling with color, yes, simplify. Is there a rule that says you can only use a number of shapes? No, you're the one that makes the rules. Okay? But if you're struggling, you might want to back off and maybe use that color that you're madly in love with today, tomorrow. Or as an accent. Does that make sense?
I totally agree with you. Limiting, maybe just pick 2 to 3 colors, maybe a warm color and a cool color, so that you have some balance there. And I have to be honest with you. Sometimes I will try to do limited colors, like the last time that Pat and I painted together, but that's a struggle for me. And
it is.
But I know that it is. But I've got the experience because I've been doing this long enough to know, even though I had all those warm colors on that first layer, you can see they're starting to disappear because I'm choosing what I want to show. And I get to a point where I just say, some of those colors are not working, and I just end up covering them up.
Right. And that's your choice because that's your aesthetic. And you had said when we were working, you really needed to get some yellow in there.
Yes.
So again, she was laying the foundation. She got a lot of neutral. She mixed things up. The green was making her nuts. But it all depends on your aesthetic. That's kind of a big word, but we all see color differently. So really, it has to appeal to you. But just because you might see somebody like Betty do these wildly colorful paintings and love them and want to own them, please buy them. But in your heart and in your mind and with your vision, you might be a more subtle color painter, and you might be naturally really big on value contrast. And so that becomes your bang. Okay, that becomes your loud voice.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
The first step is fairly straightforward and easy for me. But then when I start trying to do what you're doing now, filling in the backgrounds, I just never feel like my painting gets to where it looks like it all hangs together.
That takes a while.
You know, it looks like little pieces
Yeah.
of painting. So do you have a recommendation for that?
Yeah, I think that's something that's just going to take some practice. One of the things that I do to try to pull it together is, so I'm using my cool colors in a lot more areas. So you can see my cooler colors, my blues, trying to bring in some greens also. You can see I'm covering more areas, and I'm only doing pops of the warm colors on this particular one. So that's one way to be able to kind of calm the chaos, but also be able to kind of pull it together.
Yes, and you look for a common thread. You know, if it's all over the place, like Betty's saying, you know, she might say, okay, I need these darks to kind of show through the piece here, because that becomes the common thread, or whatever color she has dominate becomes the common thread. And that, again, also has to do with elements of design. And of course, you're just hearing me talk about what I teach. You know, at a certain point, you take a look at your piece and you decide, do I want it? Is it mostly warm? Is it mostly cool?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't make that decision, then you're kind of in the middle. So just check it off. It's something you need to think about. Okay, is it mostly noisy or is it mostly quiet? If it's in the middle, if you can't say, well, it's noisy here and it's quiet there, and so it's in the middle. Okay, it's not bad. It's just in the middle. That's a decision. So push it one way or the other. So when you go down all those elements of design and you decide what ones you're going to accentuate, that will pull your piece together. But you have to make decisions. If you try to keep it all the time, you're always going to be in the middle, and you're going to feel like there's something else you need to do.
Yep. Well said.
You keep, okay?
I've got
Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How do you guys avoid mud?
So the way I avoid mud is I don't mix my warm colors and my cool colors together. I keep them separate. Unless I want mud, and sometimes I do as my neutral, and then I will mix those two colors together. Like on my palette right now, I've got a whole bunch of cool colors and I've got a bunch of warm colors. So right now, if I was to take, I'm going to take some green here, and I'm going to take my magenta, and I'm going to mix that together. I'm going to add a little white to it using the same brush. So this isn't really let me add a little bit of blue to that. It's not really a mud, but it's not a color that, I'll put it down here. It ended up being a purple, but let me grab some red. So I'm trying to mix the two colors together. I'm still getting a purple. So, but avoiding, you know.
Yeah, but if you want to.
Try to avoid mixing your warm colors and your cool colors, so that they don't create mud.
Do you let your warm colors, for instance, on this one, did you let your warm colors dry first before you started putting on the cool?
I did. For the most part, they were
so that was drying. That's what you were doing.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a practical question?
Yep.
As I'm watching you painting away and then you step aside to talk to us, are your paints not drying out?
No.
How do you keep them from drying out as you're working away?
I don't. I mean, some of them dried out. The ones that are still in a pile are still wet. I think it's the humidity. Where are you?
I'm in Quebec, Canada. So it's very humid today.
So I think that's drying out your palette. Where I'm in San Jose, California, and our humidity isn't really that high. So, and I've got a fan blowing underneath my desk that's blowing up this way. I just put out the amount that I think I'm going to use, and then I try to use that up. If I don't, that takes me back to why I love Nova, because if it dries up on my palette, I don't care. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to stress over it. There are extenders you can get. Sometimes I'll use glazing medium, more so that I can get a sheer look on my piece of piece that I'm working on. But some people I know will spray water. I don't have that issue, so I don't have good solutions, but I'm going to defer to Pat and see if she's got some ideas.
Well, cover it with plastic.
I'm a renegade. The first thing I think that you need to do, no, I'm not going to say you need to do that, but what I learned to do is you got to let go of some control. I mean, you're going to find that problems can become your friend. All right. And when you're talking about, how do you avoid mud? Well, maybe you don't avoid mud. Maybe you go into the mud, make a whole bunch of monsters, and then you find out that, you know what? You see this mud over here? If I put something next to that mud, like I can show you right here, all right? If I put something next to this mud, see this brown nasty? If I put a pure color next to that mud, then all of a sudden that mud is like,
beautiful.
I need that mud.
Yes, you do.
And so I wouldn't learn that unless I went into the mud and then I responded to it. So now I have that. Whereas if I put two pure colors next to each other, and that's perfectly legitimate and fine, I will have a different kind of contrast. And that's called pure hue contrast. And there's plenty of painters, again, that's your aesthetic. That's what you do. Okay, like if I put this, I want to put this pink next to that, okay? Now, if they cross over, they're still going to make a nice color, okay? But I can't get this. What I have is this, and I like that. But if I go and I, mix all my colors together and get some horrible, I don't know, whack job color, all right? Because I'm not paying attention, all right? And it doesn't have to have black in it. It could have burnt again. It could have anything. All right. But now I go here and I put this around these colors or next to these colors. Then all of a sudden these colors become, to me, all right, this is what you call intensity contrast. These colors, something different happens. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Can I just say to Ellen in Quebec, I'm in Ontario, Canada, and I just take a little light mister and just lightly spray my acrylic paint so they don't dry out. You don't have to make them super saturated with water, but every once in a while, I'll give them a little spritz and they won't dry out on you. And it's really humid today.
I've had instructors say no water. Don't mist, never use water at all.
You don't want to mix too much water because then it breaks down the polymers in the paint and makes them blow apart. They don't stick together. But just a little fine mist when you first put your paints out on your palette, and as you go, it should keep them fresh. Especially we're only working for an hour or so, but it's really humid here, and that's how I do it.
Okay,
good tip.
I have one thing to say on that. I'm Lori.
Hi, Lori.
If you buy a Masterson palette, they're not that expensive, honestly. And if you're worried about it drying out and don't want to mist it, it's got a sponge at the bottom and it's actually got a top. It's all plastic. And it's got a sponge. Then you put this paper you wet. And I keep my paints, they'll stay wet in there for days. I don't know who that was to, but.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Yeah, I've heard good things about that. The only reason I don't like to use it is it's too small of an area for me. I love to just spread out, but I've heard good things about that.
I have the 18 by, or it's big.
Yeah.
I have the bigger one, but I have both. One's for travel, but I don't always use it, but that's a good way to keep your paints moist and not waste.
Yeah, that's great.
Your goal.
Okay.
You can also use
Lori.
Hello.
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 Sorry, what was that called? Sorry.
Oh, it's a Masterson.
Can you type it up, Lori?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, right?
In the chat. Thank you.
I move all my paint.
The other thing that you can do is you can, I know Nicholas Wilkin does this, you can get a tray and you can wet a bunch of paper towels okay? And then put a sheet of tracing paper over that.
Yep.
And then you can put your paint in there, and that'll keep it moist a long time. And then you can cover it as well. But if you're going to be working, say, all day, and you want them to stay, you know, moist, and you want to put a hefty amount on, especially if you're doing a big piece, that will definitely do it. Okay, so you know, you do have to experiment, and the Masterson palettes, yes, are very good. But you're always inventing, because it's like Betty said, all of a sudden I need something bigger. You know? Right. So, you know, then you look at that option and go, how can I make something like that? You know, I'm an artist. How can I create something like that that'll enable me to work big and not have my colors dry out?
Right.
So then, you know, whether you find a baking pan or whatever, you do the same thing. You put that wet spongy stuff underneath it, and then you put a top of plastic or something and put a rubber band around it. And it's not that pretty, and it doesn't look like you've got it all together when you go to workshops, but it works at home.
And you can freeze it afterwards if you
freezing. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Pat, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Bon. I was just going to piggyback on what Pat was saying, because that's what I do. I use a cafeteria tray with like 4 layers of those blue shop towels, and you wet those towels, like really soak them, and then lay tracing paper, or I find parchment paper works better. And my paints will stay. I have another tray that I put on top of it when I'm finished, like not to be airtight, but just to put something to cover. And my paints will stay wet for a week or more. They just don't ever dry. And I don't miss them to do anything.
Right, then you're not breaking down the acrylic.
Right, what do you mean?
Well, sometimes if you add too much water to acrylic,
yeah, right.
It'll break down the plastic.
That's worked really, really well for me, and I'm in a pretty humid, I'm in Virginia. We get a lot of humidity, but they just, they never dry. So.
That's cool. That's great. It does work. And again, also you have to know how often you're going to paint. If you're going to paint every day, then you really do want to, you know, set up a system that's going to stay wet. If you know you're not going to get back to painting for a week, then, you know, freeze it, or, you know, limit the amount and keep adding more to keep your tubes right there, and keep adding until you use it up.
Right. And I also have I have additional ones too. When you were speaking about the size needing more, I just get another tray and do the same thing again.
Yeah.
Anyway, it has worked well for me.
That's great. So Pat, we are up on an hour here, just over an hour.
Are we?
I've got other commitments today, so as much as I would love to stay and paint all afternoon, I've got a commission I got to go finish up, and I've got some other work that I got to get done. So I just wanted to, that's looking really cool, Pat. Love that.
I'm loving what you're doing too.
I'm somewhere in the middle, not done.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's going to need some more work, so I'll continue to work on that. But I know that I've got something coming up, and I know you've got some classes. You want to talk about your classes real quick for folks if they're interested?
Yeah, sure. Initially, I mean, I have some new classes that are coming out that aren't published yet, but right now I have 3 online courses. One is called Path to Abstraction, Restoring the Sacred Elements. And it's really about bringing the elements back into abstract organization. And it's really not a scary process. What it does is it helps you land the plane, like you're talking about. You get into the middle, but it's fragmented. You don't know how to bring it together. So that one is really, really good for that. It also starts out slow, because you learn about the different elements of it. You learn about line. You learn about simple palette. You learn about doing a monochromatic piece. And then there goes to mapping your path, which starts to apply what you learn in Path to Abstraction 1. You don't have to have both of them. And then there's a small one called Shape Up. And what I'm starting to do is break down the elements of design so that you can get really, really familiar with them, even if you're not a shape painter. In Shape Up, it's like, okay, let me start to put the other stuff away, like I was talking about, and I'm going to really make this shape the main event. You can add lines, you can add texture, you can do that, but it helps you to start to see. And then, you know, your vocabulary gets better and better and better, like a writer. And now you have more to draw from, and you can use words that you like or words that you don't like. And then the next one will be texture. And then it's like, you know, try to resist the urge to bring just as much of everything back in. It can have all those other things, but again, look for dominances. So that's what that class is starting to teach you, how to see. And again, I like to call it landing the plane, because it can get pretty windy out there. Right, Betty?
Yeah, absolutely. No, those sound like great courses of, especially if you're just getting started. So good.
And you want to be able to paint with abandon, you know. But if you have that in your belt, then you can bring it back.
Absolutely.
Like you said.
Yep.
And save it.
Yeah.
So those are my courses. It's www.patbutynskiart.com. That's just the site for the classes.
Awesome.
And also anybody who's on here today, if we have your email address, I'm going to be sending out some special offers regarding the courses.
Yeah, that's great. So we were able to get your email address when you signed up for this Zoom session today. So Pat's going to send you an email, and if you want to, you know, take her up on her offer with a discount, then she'll be sending out that information to you.
Yeah, and then, a coupon.
Yeah, and then for me, I've got, some of you guys already know this, and some of you guys already signed up, so thank you. But I've got another Paint with Betty session, and that's happening next Saturday. So same time, same place, next Saturday here. And that's going to be a 2-hour workshop where I am going to be also working large like this, but I'm going to be giving you exercises to do on, you know, loosening up, mark making exercises. We're going to talk about color harmony. We're going to talk about values and how important those are in your piece. So it's going to be covering a lot of fundamental stuff, and we're going to also just be creating together and having some fun. So you can work on paper, you can work on canvas if you want. I use the same process whether I'm working on paper, canvas, or wood. So I'll send out information about that. I've got a special going on until Sunday night, tomorrow night. So I'll be sure to send you the link with the special so that you can, if you want to join, you are welcome to join. And yeah, it's going to be fun. 2+ hours, and it's also recorded, and you'll get a link to that recording so that you can play it back. So you can choose to either just watch during the live session, or you can create at the same time and then do the playback later. And then today's session, Pat, also we are recording this. And so we're going to, both Pat and I are going to be putting this up on our YouTube channels. So you guys could play it back and listen to the questions and answers. And yeah, we'll
and you get a second chance to ask questions. I also wanted to add to what you were saying that I didn't mention, that again, with the courses, it's lifetime access. So if you watch the course, you might want to watch a course through, just like with Betty, just like with what we're doing now, or with next week when Betty sets up. And you know, it's hard to learn everything at once, but you have lifetime access, and you can go back in, and that's very forgiving. And do it again, go slow, go at your own pace. Don't do it until December. You know what I mean? But do take advantage of it, because what she's setting up here, you know, I support all the way, because it sounds, I mean, it's fundamental, but you have to know that in order to be free. You do. It doesn't bind you, it frees you.
Yep.
So,
all right.
Good deal.
Yeah, this was fun. I think I've got a really good start here, and I've got getting there. So, and I know you've got a lot done on yours too. So awesome. I hope you guys all enjoyed painting with us. If you were painting with us, we appreciate you doing that. If you want to, if you're on social media, tag us with PB, so Pat Betty Art Jam. So PB Art Jam. So # PB Art Jam. And that way we can see what you created. We'll post what we created, and we can all check out each other's work.
Yeah, that'd
be
fun.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. Really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, Pat. And
thank you, Betty.
We'll see you guys
Pleasure.
soon. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.